There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that survival is no longer enough. You didn't wake up just to get through the day. You woke up because there is something inside you that refuses to stay small, silent, or stuck. Growth doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you choose daily, intentional practices that align your life with who you are becoming, not who you've been trying to outrun. Transformation is rarely loud. Most of the time, it shows up quietly in the habits you repeat when no one is watching. The first habit every woman must master is the art of starting her day with intention instead of reaction. Before the world gets a vote, you give yourself permission to breathe, to think, to ground your spirit. When you rush into the noise, you surrender your power. But when you pause, even for a few moments, you remind yourself that you are not behind, broken, or unworthy of stillness. Your morning doesn't need perfection, it needs presence. Another habit is learning how to speak to yourself with compassion. The voice in your head should not sound like your worst critic. It should sound like someone who believes you can grow without being shamed into it. You will make mistakes, misjudge moments, and miss opportunities, but none of that disqualifies you from grace. When you learn to talk to yourself with kindness, you stop punishing yourself for being human and start empowering yourself to heal. You must also master the habit of protecting your energy. Not every invitation deserves your yes. Not every conversation deserves your explanation. When you overextend yourself trying to prove your worth, you end up exhausted and resentful. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors with locks that you control. Protecting your peace is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. Another daily practice is choosing growth over comfort. Comfort will keep you familiar, but growth will stretch you into alignment with your purpose. There will be days when discipline feels heavy and consistency feels inconvenient, but those are the days when transformation is happening beneath the surface. You don't have to move fast, you just have to keep moving. Gratitude is another habit that reshapes your entire perspective. When you train yourself to notice what's working instead of obsessing over what's missing, you shift from survival mode into abundance. Gratitude doesn't deny pain. It simply refuses to let pain be the loudest voice in the room. Even on hard days, there is something within reach that reminds you that life is still unfolding in your favor. You must also practice honoring your body. Rest is not a reward for exhaustion. It is a requirement for sustainability. Fueling yourself well, moving with intention, and listening when your body whispers before it screams are all acts of wisdom. You are not a machine designed to produce endlessly. You are a living, breathing being deserving of care. Another habit is being mindful of what you consume, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. What you watch, listen to, and engage with shapes your beliefs. If you constantly feed on negativity, comparison, and fear, it will show up in how you see yourself. Choose content that challenges you, inspires you, and reminds you of your value. You also need to master the habit of forgiveness, especially toward yourself. Holding on to guilt keeps you anchored to a version of yourself that no longer exists. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to outgrow what once made sense. Forgiveness doesn't erase the lesson. It releases the weight so you can move forward lighter and wiser. Another daily habit is learning how to ask for help without shame. Strength is not found in doing everything alone. There is power in community, in mentorship, in vulnerability. When you allow others to support you, you honor the truth that you were never meant to carry everything by yourself. Finally, you must commit to believing in yourself, even when the evidence feels thin. Faith in yourself is built in the small, consistent decisions to keep showing up. Some days your belief will be bold, other days it will be quiet and trembling, but it still counts. You are becoming someone new, and becoming takes patience. Every habit you choose is a vote for the woman you are becoming. You don't need a perfect routine, a flawless past, or external validation to begin. You just need the courage to be intentional today, to choose yourself again, and to trust that the small things you practice daily are shaping a life that reflects your strength, your resilience, and your worth. Transformation rarely announces itself with fireworks. Most of the time, it slips into your life quietly, disguised as a choice you make when no one is applauding. Becoming the woman you envision doesn't start with a grand breakthrough. It begins the moment you decide to live with intention instead of letting life drag you by circumstance. Intention is the difference between waking up and simply existing and waking up with awareness of who you are and where you're going. When you move through your days on autopilot, reacting to every demand, distraction, and disappointment, you surrender your power without realizing it. Reaction keeps you busy but stagnant. Intention, on the other hand, asks you to pause and decide how you want to show up. It reminds you that you still have authority over your mindset, your actions, and your direction, even when life feels overwhelming. Choosing intention is not about controlling outcomes. It's about controlling your response. Daily intention teaches you that growth is a process, not a personality trait. No one is born disciplined, focused, or confident. Those qualities are developed through repeated decisions to act in alignment with your values. Each small habit you commit to becomes a brick in the foundation of your future. Reading instead of scrolling, resting instead of overworking, speaking up instead of shrinking, all seem minor in the moment, but over time, they redefine who you are. Growth often requires you to choose what is uncomfortable over what is familiar. Comfort will keep you safe, but it will also keep you stuck. The habits that transform you will not always feel good at first. Waking up earlier, setting boundaries, saying no, and staying consistent when motivation fades can feel inconvenient and even lonely. But discomfort is not a sign that you're failing. It's often proof that you're stretching beyond old limitations. Living with intention also means understanding that progress does not have to be fast to be real. We live in a world that celebrates instant results, but sustainable transformation happens gradually. There will be days when your effort feels insignificant and your growth feels invisible. On those days, intention reminds you that showing up still matters. Consistency, even when imperfect, compounds into confidence over time. Choosing growth over comfort requires honesty with yourself. It asks you to confront habits that no longer serve you and patterns that keep repeating because they're familiar, not because they're healthy. Intention forces you to ask hard questions. Why do I avoid this? What am I afraid to face? What would change if I actually committed to my healing? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary if you want a life that feels aligned instead of exhausting. Intentional living also reshapes how you define success. Instead of measuring your worth by productivity or approval, you begin to value alignment and peace. Success becomes about becoming emotionally healthier, mentally stronger, and spiritually grounded. It's about making decisions today that the future version of you will thank you for, even if the present version feels challenged. Every intentional habit reinforces the belief that you are capable of change. When you keep promises to yourself, no matter how small, you rebuild trust with yourself. That trust becomes the soil where confidence grows. Over time, you stop waiting for permission or validation because your consistency has proven to you that you can follow through. Living with intention doesn't mean EV. Every day will be disciplined or inspired. Some days will be messy, tired, and uncertain. Intention simply means that even on those days, you refuse to quit on yourself. You adjust, you rest, you recommit, and you keep moving forward. Growth allows room for grace, not perfection. When you choose intention daily, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as an active participant in your own becoming. You begin to recognize that your habits are shaping your destiny, whether you're conscious of them or not. Intentional choices create intentional outcomes, and those outcomes eventually form a life that reflects your values instead of your fears. Transformation begins the moment you decide that your days matter, your choices matter, and your consistency matters. It begins when you stop waiting for motivation and start relying on commitment. Each intentional step forward, no matter how small, carries you closer to the woman you are becoming, shaping her quietly, steadily, and faithfully through the power of daily choice. There is a quiet strength that emerges when a woman begins to understand her worth and refuses to negotiate it. Self-worth is not something you earn by overgiving or proving your value through exhaustion. It is something you protect through the way you speak to yourself, the limits you set, and the grace you allow yourself to receive. When compassion and boundaries become daily practices, they shift the way you show up in every area of your life. The relationship you have with yourself is the longest one you will ever sustain, yet it is often the most neglected. Many women carry an inner voice that is harsh, impatient, and unforgiving, believing that criticism will keep them disciplined or motivated. In reality, constant self-judgment drains confidence and deepens insecurity. When you choose to speak to yourself with compassion, you create a safe space within your own mind. Compassion does not excuse unhealthy behavior. It encourages growth without humiliation. Learning to honor your emotions instead of suppressing them is another form of self-respect. You are allowed to feel disappointment without calling yourself weak. You are allowed to grieve without rushing your healing. When you acknowledge your feelings instead of shaming yourself for them, you give yourself permission to process, release, and move forward. Emotional awareness strengthens you far more than emotional avoidance ever could. Boundaries play a critical role in protecting your self-worth. Without them, you become vulnerable to burnout, resentment, and self-betrayal. Saying yes when you want to say no may keep the peace temporarily, but it often costs you your peace in the long run. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about taking responsibility for your own well-being. They teach people how to treat you by first teaching you how to treat yourself. Many women struggle with boundaries because they fear rejection, conflict, or being misunderstood. They worry that protecting themselves will make them seem selfish or unkind. But self-worth requires the courage to disappoint others rather than continually disappoint yourself. You can be loving and still be firm. You can be kind and still be clear. Boundaries allow you to give from a place of fullness instead of obligation. Rest is another powerful expression of self-worth. In a culture that glorifies busyness, rest is often seen as laziness or weakness. But when you ignore your need for rest, your body and spirit eventually demand it through exhaustion, illness, or emotional breakdown. Rest is not a reward for productivity. It is a necessity for sustainability. Choosing to rest is choosing to believe that your value is not tied to how much you produce. Forgiveness, especially toward yourself, is essential for protecting your self-worth. Carrying guilt for past mistakes keeps you anchored to versions of yourself that no longer exist. Growth requires release. Forgiving yourself does not mean you forget the lesson. It means you refuse to let shame define you. You are allowed to learn, to evolve, and to become better without dragging your past behind you like a sentence. Self-worth is also reinforced through the decisions you make about who and what you allow access to your life. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your vulnerability, your time, or your energy. Being selective does not make you closed off. It makes you discerning. When you surround yourself with people who respect your boundaries and honor your growth, you create an environment where your confidence can thrive. Practicing compassion and boundaries daily reshapes how you show up in the world. You stop over-explaining your choices. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. Instead, you begin to move with quiet confidence, rooted in the understanding that you are worthy of care, rest, respect, and grace. As self-worth strengthens, so does your ability to show up authentically. You no longer perform our approval or shrink to fit expectations that were never designed with you in mind. You give freely, but not at the expense of yourself. You listen deeply, but not while silencing your own needs. Compassion and boundaries become the framework that allows you to live with balance, integrity, and emotional freedom. Protecting your self-worth is not a one-time decision. It is a daily commitment. Each moment you choose kindness over criticism, clarity over people-pleasing, and rest over relentless striving, you reinforce the truth that you matter. These practices build a life where your inner world feels safe, respected, and supported, allowing you to grow without losing yourself along the way. Growth is sustained not just by effort, but by what you choose to believe when the journey feels heavy. There will be seasons when progress is visible and confidence feels natural, and there will be moments when doubt whispers louder than hope. In those moments, faith becomes the anchor that keeps you moving. Faith is not always loud or bold. Sometimes it is simply the decision to keep going, even when you are unsure of how things will unfold. Believing in yourself is not about having unwavering confidence every day. It is about refusing to quit on yourself when the evidence feels thin. There will be days when you don't see results, when your efforts go unnoticed, and when your prayers feel unanswered. Faith reminds you that growth is happening beneath the surface, even when you cannot see it yet. The willingness to trust the process is often what separates those who evolve from those who remain stuck. Gratitude plays a powerful role in strengthening that faith. When life feels overwhelming, it is easy to focus on what is missing, what went wrong, or what still hasn't changed. Gratitude shifts your attention to what is still standing, what is still possible, and what is still within reach. It does not deny pain or struggle. It simply refuses to let them dominate your perspective. Gratitude trains your heart to recognize progress in small forms and blessings in unexpected places. Practicing gratitude daily rewires how you interpret your experiences. Instead of viewing challenges as proof of failure, you begin to see them as opportunities for growth. You recognize how far you have come instead of only how far you still want to go. Gratitude nurtures resilience because it reminds you that even on difficult days, there is something worth holding on to. That awareness fuels hope and keeps discouragement from taking root. Support is another essential element of sustained growth. The idea that you must do everything alone is one of the most exhausting myths women are taught. Strength is not found in isolation. It is found in connection. When you allow others to support you, you acknowledge that you were never meant to carry every burden by yourself. Seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of wisdom. Community provides perspective, encouragement, and accountability. It reminds you that your struggles are not unique and that your growth matters to more than just you. There is healing in being seen, heard, and understood. When you surround yourself with people who believe in your potential, it becomes easier to believe in yourself. Their faith can carry you on days when yours feels fragile. Vulnerability is the bridge that connects faith, gratitude, and support. Opening up requires courage because it involves risk. It means allowing others to see you without the armor of perfection. But vulnerability creates space for authentic connection, and authentic connection strengthens resilience. When you share your journey, you realize that you are not alone in your doubts, fears, or hopes. Faith grows when it is practiced consistently, even in small ways. Sometimes faith looks like getting up and trying again. Sometimes it looks like resting when you need to instead of pushing yourself into burnout. Other times, it looks like releasing control and trusting that things will come together in ways you cannot yet imagine. Faith adapts to the season you are in and meets you where you are. Gratitude and faith together create a mindset that is rooted in hope rather than fear. You stop waiting for everything to be perfect before believing in yourself. You learn to appreciate the journey as much as the destination. Each step forward, no matter how small, becomes evidence that you are capable of growth. Allowing support into your life requires humility and trust. It means admitting that you don't have all the answers and that you don't need to. When you let others walk alongside you, you create a network of strength that sustains you through uncertainty. Support does not remove challenges, but it makes them more manageable. As faith deepens, gratitude sharpens, and support surrounds you, growth becomes less about striving and more about becoming. You stop forcing outcomes and start trusting timing. You move forward with a quiet confidence rooted in the understanding that even on the hardest days, you are supported, you are earning, and you are still moving towards something meaningful. This journey is not about perfection, performance, or proving your worth to the world. It is about becoming intentional with your days, protecting your inner life with compassion and boundaries, and allowing faith, gratitude, and support to carry you through every season of growth. The habits you choose daily are shaping the woman you are becoming, whether they feel small or significant in the moment. Each intentional choice strengthens your confidence, each boundary preserves your peace, and each act of faith reminds you that you are not walking this path alone. When you commit to these practices, you stop merely surviving and begin living with clarity, resilience, and purpose, knowing that your consistency is quietly creating a life that reflects your strength, your healing, and your undeniable worth. And that is the woman the world has been waiting to see.